Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Connor Williams, joined by James Pendleton, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Frank Lampard and his future at the club and how he's been getting on. Not quite a year, but nearly a year into his tenure as Everton manager, which is shocking to believe because when you look at him, it looks like he's aged 10 in the last year. First of all, James, just give me your thoughts on Frank Lampard at the minute and his tactics.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a great deal to say, is there really? I mean, it's so evident that we had to have a big overhaul in the summer. I think everyone was quite pleased with that overhaul. We changed a load of the players, and you're thinking maybe, maybe someone's gonna change for us, but it just feels like he's kind of stuck in between a couple of ideas. Does he want to be pragmatic? Does he want to play with these penalty box centre backs? Does he want to play with these sort of dynamic midfield players? Do we want to press? Do we want to sit back? Do we want to go man to man? What do we want to do? It's really hard to tell. And I think, to be fair to him, he came in. You remember the Brentford game, his first game in charge, and the change was just night and day. I mean, absolutely battered Brentford, played off the park that day, played really well, and I think everyone was super pleased with the job that he'd done in such a short space of time. It became very clear very quickly that we couldn't play like that in the Premier League because we were just going to get spanked, and as we did against Tottenham, I think that was the big game for him. He swapped possession for pragmatism. It paid off. When you're thinking in the summer now, let's reset. And then, as much as I'm a fan of the signings we made, I do think you kind of feel as if we are stuck in between a couple of different ideas, and he's got to find a way to sort it, because I think when you're caught in two minds of how you want to play, you end up doing what we're doing, where there's an endable style of play, there's no sort of pattern to play, there's no phase to play, there's nothing to kind of hang on to. I said this on Twitter after the Bournemouth game. I just don't see anything with this Everton team at the minute, and that's the big thing he's got to change over this break, because it now looks like he's going to get it, rightly or wrongly. Obviously, I'm sure people have their own thoughts on that, but it looks like he'll be in charge after Christmas, so he's really got to sort of get his act together and decide how he wants his Everton team to play.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is caught in two minds. I don't know if that's sort of ambition running his head or maybe inexperience. He's only his third club, and I'm pretty sure he's only been managing for about 4 years. So there is that level of it. It's not just results, is it? I know it's easy to say. People might look at results and say some have gone this way, some have gone that way. But the last week, I've noticed stats coming out as well. I think his points per game is, if not worse now after the Bournemouth games, was similar to Rafa Benitez's at this time last year, which is about the time that Everton fans were starting to turn. Well, I think we'd already turned at this point last year, which argues the debate is he getting a bit of an easier ride because he's not ex-Liverpool, potentially. But when you look the XG's low, the points per game, like I said, I think shots faced is pretty atrocious as well. Do you think do you think it is the points per game with Rafa Benitez? Do you think now, looking on, he is getting maybe a little bit of an easier ride because he's not Rafa Benitez?
Yeah, exactly. But I think, to be fair, rightly or wrongly, again, we said it as soon as we appointed Benitez that he was always going to get it harder, and the fact that he was absolutely crap didn't help. In the first place, I'm not saying if he was good, he would have had loads of sticks. He wouldn't have done. It would have been interesting to see whether we'd sacked Lampard, brought in Benitez, and he kept us up, and we'd be where we are now. How would we feel? I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I dread to think about it, really. But yeah, I mean, he was always going to get an easier ride. It didn't matter who came in. And to be fair to Lampard, he endeared himself straight away to Everton, and I think that was something different, because I think between Koeman and Allardyce and Benitez and not Ancelotti, but I think by the end, everyone kind of felt that what Ancelotti was saying were just kind of sort of what he was saying didn't really mean anything, because he left in the first chance he got type things. I just think everyone was kind of taken aback by that. It was nice to have a manager there who, we needed him, but he needed us as well, kind of vibe. And I think that does make it a bit easier. But as I say, I think so long as you weren't Benitez or someone of a similar background, in terms of both managerially and who he's actually physically managed, not just his quality, I think he would have received an easier sort of ride with it, as you say. But the the tide was always going to turn still, regardless. I think most managers do get kind of a year to kind of see where they're at, especially managers who can start 6 or 7 of their own players. I can't remember the last Everton manager we could say that about. Probably Ronald Koeman in terms of getting that real recruitment behind you, which I think Lampard, to be fair, he got in the summer window. So he's absolutely getting an easier ride, again, rightly or wrongly. But we can't sort of keep him in a job because he's a nice guy and because he clearly does like Everton. You got to keep him in a job because he's good, and that's what he's not showing at the minute. So yeah, he was always going to get an easier ride, though, as I say. I think.
Yeah, I think I think that is the case, and when you do look at the stats, and there've been plenty of them this week. I think this week has been absolute stat mania for Everton on Twitter, but they are very, very similar. One of the things people are sort of jumping to his defence with is the defensive improvement, but even that's sort of opened up a bit of a debate. I saw. I think it's Baz from Toffee TV going on the overlap saying that we've not been overrun in midfield all of this season when Carragher said it's one of our weaker areas, which I'm not too sure why he said that because I've definitely seen it once or twice. But a lot of people are sort of saying, regardless of that, we do face a lot of shots. We are letting a lot of shots at the goal. I think it was before the Fulham game, the game before that, the Fulham game and Bournemouth. We'd faced, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a lot of shots. Do you think is Lampard defensively, or do you think just that's the recruitment and having the likes of Cody and Tarkowski who are very, very good experienced centre-backs that's helped us out, and obviously throwing Idrissa Gueye right in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear Baz say that, to be fair, but that's a shocker, as you say. I mean, we got sort of ploughed down in last weekend in the midfield. There's that clip doing the rounds of Jefferson Lerma and Lewis Cook doing a 1-2 around our entire midfield. I mean, it's like, that's... Yeah, I don't know why he said that, but I think the main issue I kind of have is I just feel, as I say, I think we're a bit confused. We've got 2 midfielders in Iwobi and Onana who are going to want to press on, and how good their press is a different subject. But in terms of they're going to get up the pitch, Idrissa Gueye will kind of be in that zone by himself, and then you've got 2 penalty box centre backs, you've got 2 full backs, only Mikalenko, who's not exactly buccaneer, and he's sort of in between Luca Deed and Tony Hibbert kind of vibe, if you like, and then you've got Nathan Patterson, who is a bit of an unknown quantity still, bit rash. I don't think that helps either, but I just think you end up with this big, massive gap between the defence and the midfield. It makes passing out from the back so much harder. Again, another area where I think he's just confused. He's gone to sign Neil Maupay, who's completely different to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So if you can't pass it out from the back because the gap between your defence and your midfield's too big, then you got to go along. And if you go along to someone who's 5'7", 5'8", whatever he is, he's not going to be winning the ball in those areas of the pitch. And even when Dom does eventually come back, it's you're in the lap of the gods when you're playing lottery football like that. So I think that's why, because at the end of the day, you look at Dominic Solanke's shot on last weekend, which resulted in the first goal saved by Pickford and then obviously spilled. And tapped home, but just kind of that idea of this big gap being there, and that's why I think it's 17 shots on average. I think is the number you're looking for in terms of how many we're conceding per game. But James Tarkowski's got, I think, 38 blocks or something in the league this season, so that's why we haven't conceded as many. We're actually still one of the better teams in terms of goals against this season, but in terms of expected goals against, whether you buy into it or not, I think we're 16th or 17th, and it's only getting worse, as you say. So the attack, which is already quite poor, is getting steadily worse, and the defence is just falling off a cliff. Set piece wise, defensively, we've gotten much better. I think we conceded 1 goal from set piece all season. Even that was the second ball against Brentford. But then on the other side of things, we are incredibly limp from set piece down the other end. I don't think we've scored from a corner all season. So it's these kind of things where, yeah, okay, he's done this and that's good. You're playing lottery football, as I say, when you're letting your defenders block shots constantly, because eventually the ball is going to go through them. And then your goalie, who, as good as he is, like Forrest, like Ball, he's going to spill stuff and we're going to concede goals. So it's a worry, because even the positives, people are starting to be able to pick holes in them. And you never like to do it because you want to give people their flowers for what they are doing well. But when you're in a position like us, if your positives are leading to negatives, which are keeping us sort of 17th in the table by what would be Boxing Day, you got to take the flak for that. So I don't know what he's going to do, because people are going to say that we're going to need more players, but I just think the window that we had, if you include January in that with the two fullbacks, I actually think we've had a pretty good, the best 12 months of recruitment we've had for a long time. He's bought a lot of the players, the ones that he didn't. I think I said when I was on the live stream with Callum on the weekend, Iwobi and Pickford are two of our best players, and then the two fullbacks who they're absolutely fine. The rest he bought. Other than Damari Gray, who, well, obviously less said about him, the better. But the point being, I think largely the team he's got at the minute isn't a terrible team. It's a team largely built by him, with a couple of young players. So yeah, that's where my worry comes from. But absolutely say the defensive side of things has fallen off a cliff, and that's a massive worry for Everton as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it was always obviously leading into it. People were sort of saying we're going to struggle attacking wise, which I think fans were on board with. It'd be a struggle season. Nobody thought we were going to romp Europe for Europe, but I think you can be not fine, but I think it can be okay to lack a bit of firepower as long as you're tight at the back. But like you said, if that falls apart, it's starting to look a bit like a dangerous sort of Everton, sort of bellowing Rafa Benitez last season when it started to go against the backs of the wall. Out of curiosity, before we go into the future of Frank Lampard, were you for him when we signed him, or were you a bit on the fence about him? What were your thoughts when we originally signed him?
Well, I remember, to be fair, I came on actually. I think was a deadline day. I thought it was when we got him, and I was on here with I think it was Terry and Paul. I think, and I mean, it's very hard to say because we've tried everything, and I liked his Derby team in terms of I like the fact that he's getting a lot of young players to do well. He got them into the playoffs, which is never easy. But even the Derby team, I think they're 18 for expected points last season, which is suggests he got quite lucky in a lot of games, and that's why they ended up being where they were. But the Chelsea team I had a lot of praise for. I think in his first season they were in the top four in terms of the league position. I think they came third, but for expected points, expected goals against, they were in the upper echelon for all those metrics. It looked like a really impressive team. While he didn't sign anyone, obviously everyone knew he had Mount, James, Abraham, Tamori, for example. But betting in all those players at once, it still takes a good manager to do that, and that team play good football. It's just when the second season he started signing players, he ended up with people all over the gaff. And the worry for me was that I remember a game against Leicester that Chelsea played. I saw the screenshot again, I think on the weekend. His midfield's just non-existent, and he had a similar problem at Derby where the entire centre of the park was just being vacated, and he just leaving a massive space there. And obviously, just he's come in, he's getting a lot of sticks, he's losing the ball, but you watch Just pick up the ball and there's no one ever around him, and that's the problem with Frank Lampard, where I just think his midfield is just it doesn't seem to exist in games, and that's a big concern as well. So I think overall I was for the challenge. I was for someone new. The cupboard was quite bare. I wanted Christophe Gaultier or Graham Potter in the summer. Didn't happen, and by the time January comes around, I can't even think it was linked. Obviously, Vitor Pereira, I think he's just been sacked by Corinthians, which is a worry for us. Roberto Martinez, I'm not enamoured by at all. And that was it, really, from what I remember. Maybe Paulo Fonseca as well. I can't quite remember, but it was a bunch of underwhelming coaches, and Lampard probably was in that. But I absolutely love Frank Lampard growing up, and as I say, I did have some reservations about him getting sacked by Chelsea because I did think he had done a quite good job in that first season. So I was on the fence, I think, as a lot of people largely were, but I was more positive than negative, I think. And to be fair, he got the job done, didn't he? So
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. That time, I think the summer, like you said, we missed the boat to get two very good managers. And then by the time that January came, when you're looking at him, Wayne Rooney and Vitor Pereira, him and Wayne Rooney are very much. I mean, he's more experienced than Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney would have
yeah, I
been
forgot
even
about
more
him.
of a
Yeah,
novice. And then the rest were unproven, which is an argument as well. Do we need to start venturing out? But Vitor Pereira screamed a bit Rafa Benitez vibes, would have caused all sorts of trouble on the way out of the club. From the clips I've seen of him, he seems like an entertainment value of a 10, but absolute lunatic. Um, Here's worth mentioning Footy Insider, which take with a pinch of salt, because I'm pretty sure they reported that Everton were looking to get rid of him. Then have now, the day later, reported Everton are going to stick with him, so take it with a pinch of salt. But they've said Everton have decided to stand by Lampard for now and give him time to turn the season over. The hierarchy have been in talks over the last 72 hours for his future. Obviously, under a weird time. I don't think you're ever going to get a better time to sack and replace a manager in the middle of a season than right now, because you've essentially got pre-season. It's also backed by the fact Frank Lampard and the team are out in Australia currently. If you're going to sack him, you wouldn't make him fly halfway across the world for it. That'd be a very, very brutal move for Everton. So I think it looks like we're going to stick with him. Whether we stick with him for the rest of the season will depend on him and the team when we come back. But looking at people who could replace him, Bielsa was thrown about, but it looks like he might get the Bournemouth job. Roberto Martinez, apparently, according to New World Blood Sport, I think might be Belgium. They said that Roberto Martinez is on the Everton shortlist. If they sack him, talks between the Belgian FA and Martinez had stopped, with Belgium wanting to wait till the end of the World Cup before deciding what to do with him. And it is worth pointing out as well, the fan base is sticking with backing. We put a poll up; it had 7,635 votes, so very good. One of our highest, I think, voted on. 78.7 say back him, he needs time. Out of curiosity, are you in the back him, he needs more time?
I mean, I think on Saturday I would have said I wouldn't really have minded either way, in terms of I would have been happy enough to see him axed, not because I don't really give managers time, not because I don't think that he's not because I don't particularly like him or anything like that, just because, as I say, the team has just got no identity, and you can't be without an identity in the Premier League, because it'll end up really poor. But as you say, there is, never has been, and never will be a better time to sack a manager in the middle of the season. You get 6 weeks, you get a mini pre-season. We've only got 4 players at the World Cup. One of them's a goalie. So it's not as if we're in a bad state like that. I think City have got 17 or 18 players at the World Cup. So it's a case that we're quite lucky in that regard. And then you've got the January transfer window. So if you were going to move the manager on, bring someone new in, send them out to Australia, warm weather training, get 95% of the squad up to speed, and then he can see where he wants to go with that. A couple of games, new manager bounce maybe before the window, get in the window, get a couple of players in. That's the kind of thing that you're looking at. My worry is, or another reason why I was probably edging closer to moving him on, is because Everton can't back the wrong horse again. We did it last year after Benitez, and we just about got away with it. We left him in for too long. We let him get his grubby paws all over the window. We let him bring in Anwar Al-Ghazi. We let him get rid of Luka Dean, which in isolation, I don't think that was a particularly terrible move for Everton, but just the overall principle of letting a manager you were going to sack a couple of days later sell overall your best or second best player, and then allow him to replace him. I don't mind Vitaly Mykolenko. I think he's a decent player, but I'm not sure Frank Lampard would have signed him, for example. And maybe not Nathan Patterson, especially because we needed somebody there and then, and Patterson obviously wasn't quite ready. So we can't give Lampard this unprecedented mid-season, pre-season, let him come back, let him get his grubby paws all over the window, sign a couple of players, and then get rid of him in the end of January, start of February. We can't do that again, because I think there's too many good managers in the league now. There's too many teams pulling away. There's too many teams that just can't see getting dragged into it, and too many smarter teams. I think if they need to take action, they will do so. I was more towards moving them on. Again, the cupboard's bare. There's really nobody I'm interested in taking over. So it's someone like Richard Pochettino. I think he's always going to be linked to jobs like Everton and Aston Villa. He's just joined the Athletic today, for example, as well. It's another one who just wouldn't happen with. So there's a lot to consider, but it's not ideal, the situation that we're in. So I just hope that if they do back him, that Lampard's really, really working hard this sort of mid-season, pre-season, as I say. And he's got to change 2 or 3 massive things in this team. If he does, I think we'll be okay. But it's whether he does that or not, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because I've got this horrible fear that it's typical of the Everton board. So, like you said, back in through the window, and then like either midway through the window or right at the end of it, ignoring the advantage they had, in front of them, then go, actually, no, this isn't working, see you later. And every fan crying out, going, if you were going to do it, why didn't you do it at a glorious time instead of waiting too late? You did mention the cupboard, and it is a little bare. I've got from bookmakers here, which is a absolute plethora of betting odds for the next Everton manager on the ones that are doing it, because Frank Lampard is the odds-on favourite for the next Premier League manager to get the sack, which he referenced. He said he was odds-on favourites, I think, since the start of the season, and he's outlasted 5 so far. He's also admitted we're in a relegation battle as well, worth putting that out. He's already said we're back in that. Looking at the list now, I'll read a couple off that are of interest. The odds-on favourite so far is Postecoglou from Celtic. I'm not too sure if he leaves Celtic. I've definitely butchered his name there, but I'm not too sure he leaves Celtic. What are your thoughts on that one?
I don't know. I mean, I thought it was a joke when he went to Celtic, to be fair, so I can't really talk, and he has done quite well. Again, not sure he leaves Celtic. Brighton didn't go for him, which doesn't bode well. I think that'd be a massive risk. I don't think he's a bad manager, to be fair. I'm sure he'll do all right in the Premier League, but I think it'll probably be with a smarter team than us. I think someone like Southampton or say Brighton probably could have gone for him. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against that, but I think he does need a bit of time to get his style of play brought in. I'm not sure he's quite in it for a dogfight, to be fair, just yet either. So he'd be an end of season appointment, I think, if I was to look at getting him in.
Yeah, I was going to say some of these, I'm a bit, there is a contrast in styles, which I think is fair to say, looking at Everton, is what the board tend to go for. We seem to be on a loop of one that's a bit more expressive, that followed by a pragmatic, followed by an expressive. The next odds-on favourite is, like you said, Mauricio Pochettino. Good manager. I don't think he comes to us in the nicest way possible. I take it you echo that.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, he joined the Athletic today, so I think he must know that there's nothing coming his way for the time being. Yeah, I think he's probably should have bided his time, and I'm sure he'll get a good project somewhere. But again, Villa seems to be nailed on to get him, and it didn't happen. So maybe there's something going on there.
And then there's just a couple I'll fire through that aren't really, I don't think are going to happen, or just aren't very big talkers. Brendan Rodgers, which I don't think will happen. Scott Parker, I hope doesn't happen. Vita Pereira, I don't think happens. Nor do I think Rooney. Zidane doesn't happen either. The next big one is possibly David Moyes. West Ham are down there. There's rumours he's potentially up for the chopping board, which I think would be quite harsh by the West Ham board, bearing in mind what he's give West Ham the last couple of seasons. Would you take David Moyes back at Everton?
Oh God, every year. Every year. I mean, it would be quite fitting if, like, 10 years after we moved on, we've gone round the houses and we've ended up back at David Moyes. But I said on Saturday, I'd be fine with that because I just know we'd be safe under David Moyes. Didn't actually realise how badly West Ham were doing, to be fair, but he signed some players who don't scream Moyes to me, to be honest with you. He spent a lot of money in the summer. It's not gone too well for him. But I mean, I was speaking to someone who used to work at Everton the other day and just saying how he was sad watching us on Saturday and thinking about those David Moyes, Kim Cahill teams because they are just chalk and cheese to what we look at these days. I mean, I was envious of West Ham throughout the entirety of last season. I remember watching David Moyes celebrating with the away fans after they beat Lyon, I think 3-0 in the Europa League to get to the semi-finals. Just unbelievable. I couldn't believe how well he'd done there. So, I mean, I don't see it happening, as he is still under contract at West Ham. He'd absolutely jump at the chance to come back, I'm sure. Out of all the people on that list, and there's some real shockers in there, he would definitely be my favourite, which makes me sad. But I just want an Everton team that I can count on for more than 6 weeks at a time, and I think you get that with David Moyes. I say it's far from ideal, but desperate times cause desperate measures, I suppose.
Well, speaking of former Everton managers, I did mention him in the fact that Everton are looking to see what happens at the World Cup. Roberto Martinez is on this list. He's 33-1, which I think is quite quite unreal. Like, I thought there'd be a lot closer odds than that. Bearing in mind, he seems to be another one that we just can't seem to escape being linked with every time the manager's job's available. Um, yeah, give me your thoughts on Roberto Martinez. His tenure wasn't as successful as David Moyes' by a long stretch, but do you think he's matured in his football compared to that last season? Obviously the first one was great, but that last season before he left was a bit tough at times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no fan of Roberto Martinez. I'm being totally honest. I think bringing a manager in as well, who's been in international football for a number of years, is always a massive risk. I think you go from, I know he's obsessed with football and everything, but I think you go from the day to day to the week to week, maybe of international football, month to month, even depending on the coach, I suppose. Yeah, it would be something I'd be interested in. I think they gave him the golden generation. Then they came third in the World Cup, and then other than that, they've done nothing other than what was a quite respectable finish, obviously. But he's been there for what, 3 major tournaments, and he's not pulled up any significant trees and haven't been in a final or anything like that. So, I think if he obtained genuine success there rather than watch the golden generation, it's on his last legs now, isn't it? Really, this will be his last tournament. So, um, this will be his third tournament, I should say. But yeah, I wouldn't be particularly keen if truth be told, he's not someone who interests me. His record with Belgium's great. I think he hasn't lost a qualifying game, I don't think, which is ridiculous. Really, really impressive records, and they've only lost a handful of friendlies as well. But no, he wouldn't be for me. I'd much rather go for Moyes. As I say, as you say, Rob, I'm surprised they aren't closer odds, but one of them,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it does shock me with the rumours coming out. Here's one that I think is a bit more akin to a David Moyes-esque. And he's gained a lot of popularity. I think it might be because defensively we're a bit slack at the minute and people are then dying out for it. Sean Dyche is available, a name that I would have thought would have been heavily linked last season when we were going for Lampard. Bearing in mind where we were, I thought he would have maybe been a bit better linked, but I don't know if he'd left Burnley by that point. I can't remember when they sacked him. Give me your thoughts
He's
on
still
Sean
there, I
Dyche.
think. Yeah,
Is he still there? Yeah.
yeah,
That'll
he's
be
still there, I
fine.
think. But I
Uh,
mean, it's interesting because he came out, didn't he? And he said that he never once spoke to Everton. I remember, famously when we got rid of Koeman, I remember Sky Sports saying we were in talks with him. So it's interesting that no one's ever actually spoke to him from Everton. I think if he had come out and said that we had spoken to him in the past, then maybe. I mean, I love Sean Dyche as a guy. He seems like a top guy, and I had a lot of respect for his Burnley team. Also, we've got a couple of his players now. One's doing very well, one not so much. But I mean, again, I probably would be fine with that because I think again I'd feel quite safe, but at the same time, I think Moyes has shown 100% that yes, he can set you up and yes, he can make you a hard-working team, but he can add flair to that team. I think maybe he's gone a bit too far now with the Skamackas and the Paquetas, etc. Be interesting to hear what West Ham fans think. I'm just guessing really, but with Dyche, you don't know that yet. I think he went on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago, and I think it was interesting because I wanted him to come out and say I can play whatever football is needed, but he kind of pigeonholed himself as a bit of a low block 4-4-2 merchant, which is absolutely fine. There's no problem there. But managing Burnley, managing Everton, chalk and cheese. The expectations, the demands, everything's completely different. So I'd feel quite safe under Dyche. I think I wouldn't be as against it as I'm sure loads of Evertonians would be, but I would sooner take David Moyes, but I would sooner take Dyche over Martinez or Bielsa and Postecoglou, etc.
I feel like David Moyes. I've got one more left to mention. I think David Moyes is going to be your favourite of the list. Then this one's specifically for the dads. Duncan Ferguson, who is heavy favourite for the Wigan Athletic job as well currently.
Yeah, I mean, no, I absolutely love Duncan Ferguson. It was quite funny because I think every each regime that failed, everyone said, "Well, Duncan's got to go as well." Whether it was Marnes, Koeman, Silva, Allardyce, everyone said Duncan's got to go. And then he came in charge those first couple of games. I think he managed 4 games, didn't lose a single one of them. He did absolutely brilliant. Not in normal time. I think he lost the League Cup game on pens, but he did unbelievably. And then he came in obviously last season. I think he only had one game, and it was a classic 21-22 season, 1-0 defeat at Goodison. We had about 15 of them, didn't we? So I did a whole effort against him for that. But yeah, I absolutely love Dunk. I was delighted he stayed on last season, and I was also quite happy he moved on because I wanted to go be a manager somewhere. But no, I think I would probably rather take Postecoglou or Martinez or someone like that over Dunk, to be fair, as much as I do like him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's one that my dad, for example, always absolutely would love, and says it all the time. And he doesn't quite understand when I go, I think he needs to earn his stripes because he thinks the 4 games let him count as earning his stripes.
Yeah.
But he's one of those that I don't think this is the last time he gets the, I think he will get off, depending on how he does. He will get offered it again. I don't think he's one that's definitely ruled off. And if we're still thinking about Roberto Martinez, then the likes of him, Wayne Rooney, for example, I think he's destined to be offered it at one point, depending on how his managerial career goes. If we're offering it to Martinez for a second time, I think the likes of him, Moyes, and Rooney are definitely going to get the opportunity again. But that is the list. So you've heard the list. David Moyes is your favourite. I think the last big question to ask then, to end on, is David Moyes or Frank Lampard right now? Which one would you go for?
I think, to be fair, I think at West Ham, I think if they'd sacked Moyes, then I would have said, yeah, go and get him. Obviously, whilst he's still in charge, it makes it slightly different. We don't know what West Ham's board think, whether they really want to give him time, whether they're hoping he turns around, or whether they do want to move him on, but they don't want to sack him. Maybe it's one of those things where it's a bit of a mutual thing. I don't know, but I would prefer David Moyes to Frank Lampard at the minute because I know what you get from David Moyes' teams. I know their shortcomings as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's perfect because he definitely wasn't, but I think there's some players in the squad he could really tap into, and I think he'd really get on well with in terms of the way he plays his teams play football. Whereas I think with Frank Lampard, you don't know what you're going to get from Frank Lampard's team, mainly because you don't get anything at the minute from it. You don't get a staunch defence in terms of we shut the opposition out. They get nowhere near the goal. You don't get a potent attacking line. You don't get a midfield who boss the game. You don't get high pressing. You don't get anything consistently other than concede a soft goal and you basically lost the game at that point. So I would rather have David Moyes in the dugout right now. But if truth be told, again, I know he's far from perfect, but that's where I'm at with Lampard. But obviously, as you say, he wouldn't go to Australia if he was going to get sacked before the games kick back off. So I think obviously I'll back him, I'll support him, I want him to do well. I'm not this certain Everton fantasy on Twitter. I just think want to be proven right on the whole thing. I don't care. I will look as silly as I need to so long as Everton do well. So I will still back him, obviously, but I think in that hypothetical scenario, I'd rather have David Moyes back, which pains me to say.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've not been. I've not say I'm not going to be. I'm not going to say I wasn't his biggest fan. I had doubts about him, and he's yet to win me over, which I think is a fair reflection of him and his time here. He still can win me over. I'm not one of these that's like you said. I'm not going to go. Oh, I never really liked him, so I've been proven right. I'll be gutted if he goes because we're in once again the vicious cycle of every 18 months switching a manager. And with David Moyes, as much as I like him, it would, like you said, it would take 10 years to come around the vicious cycle of switching and swapping to come right back where we were. So it'd be a really big, I think it showed a lack of direction at the football club. But I also agree. I don't think you go to Australia. I don't think you pay for his flights and all that if you intend on sacking him during the 6 weeks that we're off for. But that is all we've got time for. James, thank you for coming on and joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Don't forget, guys, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below your thoughts on Frank Lampard. Pretty sure it might split the comment section, although maybe not, because that poll says that he's still in love with the fans are still in love with him, which is another massive point when you're a manager. When you've still got the fans back in, you're still in a job. You can check out all James's stuff with the Babbling Blues in the description as well, and go check James out on Twitter. And we'll see you guys very, very soon.